Hello, I'm here today to report to you that the Supreme Court back in September ruled that the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment can be applied unequally. Recall that the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment reads that no state, and I'm reading here, can deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Now, the word person means person, as in someone who is not necessarily a citizen of the United States. This clause at that time applied only to the states. However, in 1954, the court ruled that it does in fact apply to the United States federal government. Nonetheless, 71 years later, in the case of Noem versus Vasquez-Perdomo, the anti-justices ruled that the Equal Protection Clause can be applied unequally by immigration and customs enforcement. In other words, the justices ruled against the 14th Amendment, and they did it without even concocting a make-believe story, which they typically use to violate the Constitution on behalf of their billionaire friends, bribers, and benefactors. This unconstitutional act gave ICE agents the legal cover to stop, question, and detain people based on their appearance, based on their language, their accent, their workplace, or any other marker that looks suspicious to any particular ICE agent. Now, many people assume that the court's actions legalized racial profiling, and yes, it did. But it was more than that. Anything that allegedly looks suspicious to any agent means even white citizens can be arrested in their homes without a warrant or taken off the street by masked ICE agents for any reason whatsoever that can be concocted to appear related to immigration enforcement, no matter how flimsy or false the rationale. Now, in this ruling, the Supreme Court effectively said ICE can do whatever it wants, so it made it a law that ICE can do whatever it wants, which means they also violated Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 18 of the U.S. Constitution, which states quite clearly that only Congress can make a law. And by the way, not even Congress or the Supreme Court or the president can violate the Constitution in any way, shape, or form. But you notice nobody in the media is calling them on this. Nobody in Congress is calling on them on this. They simply violated two sections of the Constitution with this one ruling. Why are people listening to lawless Supreme Court justices who violate the Constitution all the time? The obvious action for citizens is to demand of their legal representatives on all levels of government, local, federal, state, county, whatever, that they ignore the Supreme Court's rulings, which are, especially when they're lawless declarations and anti-constitutional declarations, and that all governments at all levels should continue to enforce the 14th Amendment despite the injustice's 200-year war against the U.S. Constitution. If we, the people, continue to accept ridiculous Supreme Court rulings that violate the Constitution, what could possibly happen? Well, I'll tell you what could happen. On September 30th, 2025, in the middle of the night, ICE agents rappelled down from Black Hawk helicopters onto an apartment building in Chicago, bashed indoors without warrants, constitutionally mandated warrants, arrested or detained everybody. They pulled kids out of their bed, children out of their bed who were naked and half naked. They zip tied these children's hands behind their backs and arrested and detained them. Many of these residents were U.S. citizens. Now, the injustices made their ruling in Noem v. Vasquez-Perdomo without a full briefing or hearing, and without explaining any of their alleged reasoning, if they had any. But we know the reasoning behind the justices' history because it's consistent. Every undocumented immigrant apprehended by ICE means profit for the justices' billionaire friends, bribers, and benefactors. Since each immigrant needs to be transported, they need to be guarded, they need to be imprisoned, they need to be fed, and major corporations, are public and private, are the ones doing this. And we all know, by now we should know, according to the book Triumph of Injustice, that the billionaires rely on 67 to 100% of their wealth and income on corporations, which is why the justices continuously rule in favor of corporations. It's very consistent behavior for over 200 years. Businesses such as 𝐬𝐮, operating immigration detention centers, receive billions of dollars a year from the government for persons held in their facilities. According to the American Immigration Council, regularly scheduled charter flights cost approximately, and I'm reading here, $8,577 per flight hour. A higher risk flight can cost up to $26,795 per flight hour. This is why flying undocumented immigrants home is quite profitable for wealthy investors at taxpayer expense. It also may explain why Donald Trump, President Trump himself, wants to export these undocumented immigrants that have been apprehended, who are from Mexico and El Salvador and Venezuela. Why he wants to ship them to Africa, because there's more flight hours involved, and it might be a bit riskier too to cross the Atlantic Ocean. So it's just extreme profitability in arresting these folks. If violating the 14th Amendment of the Constitution and Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 18 of the Constitution, without even using a fantasy story, is necessary to raise the profits of privately held and publicly traded corporations at the expense of the American taxpayer, to enhance the income and wealth of the justices' billionaire friends, bribers, and benefactors, the justices will do it. Anyway, this is just one of the latest stories we have. More are coming up, and I'm going to relate how the Supreme Court rulings have caused immense income and wealth inequality, how it's brought about the housing crisis, things of that nature. Anyway, you have a good night. Thank you very much.